Well, what do we have here? Welcome back, travelers. Looking to get yourselves butchered and turned into kimfuel, perhaps? No? How about maybe having your heart stolen from your chest and sold off at a discount price? Yeah, well, I'm not really sure what you're doing here then. Nevertheless, though, thank you for stopping in. You, I, and our band of merry organ-harvesting misfits have a lot of work to do today. Starting off with our hospital. I think a pretty decent-sized end goal, or something I'd like to have completed just before the end of this series, is having the entire hospital used for our practice. And to go about doing that, we're going to have to clear the place out a bit, obviously, so that's exactly what we're starting with today. Just basically dumping all this shit and deconstructing it and making the place ready and fit for use. Sure, obviously not the most glorious of jobs, but it still needed to be done. And now that things are cleaned out a bit, we'll be able to take over the rest of this facility anytime we so please. But before we go about doing that, it looks like we have a slaver, the first of the series. Now, we've probably had some slave caravans, but Fox & Co. here are dedicated slavers out in the wasteland. Such a debaucherous business as ours should probably make allies with other debaucherous folks like Fox here. I'll tell you what, Fox, I'll take a few of your slaves, and in exchange you can have a couple of our hearts, and you know what, I'll throw in some lungs too. It's a deal. We ended up purchasing 4 people, one of which was a ghoul by the name of Vargas who joined us instantly. So we bought his freedom, obviously. The other 3 were a bit more hesitant about being basically organ harvesting raiders and decided that they didn't want to join us at all. So we now have 3 slaves as well. However, I like to think of myself as quite persuasive, so everyone but Vargas got tossed into the hole, and we'll give them a couple of weeks to think about their choices and whether or not they'd like to join us or whether or not they'd like to become our patients, inevitably becoming kimfuel in the very end. But we can't just sit around and watch them and stare at them all day. No, while our new friends are in time out while they think about what they did, we are going to start researching sterile materials. That's right, baby. We are finally going to have some type of bare minimum standard for hygiene around these parts, especially in our operating rooms. We're moving on up the world. Or we will be, once we get it researched, that is. In the meantime, we are actually beginning to run quite low on food. As you might imagine, our growing hasn't been all that great due to winter time, and we've hunted basically all of the wildlife that we could. However, on the opposite side of Inn's Landing Crater, we have an enemy hunting site. Not only are Ginther, Vargas, and Monovine going to be going out and looking for any possible patients who we might be able to take the organs of and sell, of course, but we're also going to be hunting for food while we're there. And of course, this is going to be the first greatest test for Vargas to prove himself as one of us. If he's willing to kill for us, then he can be one of us. The 3 of them would head out on foot to their destination, arriving a couple of days later, hidden away in the ruins of this once great pre-war city, a merry, teeny band of hunting raiders. Well, these folks might not have known it at the time, but they did technically settle within our territory, which means that they owe us a bit of a tax of their product. And the tax that they'll pay today, though, is their lives. We have to send a message, you understand? Even so, most of them, but this one in particular, are much better armored than we are, and even armed. We'll need to be quite cautious. So in other words, let's hope the clap from Ginther's great big green ass cheeks don't set them off and alert them to our presence as we're trying to sneak through the city ruins. We would tiptoe throughout the rubble, coming towards them from the south, taking cover by some abandoned buildings and other piles of junk and opening fire on them. First up was their butcher, who took a good pipe between the eyes, killing her. Next was one of the hunters himself. Initially, he had done pretty pretty good at avoiding our grenades as we threw them at his feet. It was a bit hard to see with all the clutter, but eventually we would knock him to the ground, almost killing him. But thankfully he was alive, and hopefully his insides aren't too badly damaged. But we were quickly being flanked from the left side by their power armor-wielding member, who started pinning us down behind some walls with their minigun. This dirty, no-good son of a bitch was raining hell in our general direction until a grenade finally incapacitated them. Seeing that their strongest member had fallen in battle, the last remaining raider decided to try to flee the area. Well, that didn't work out so well, though. Speaking of which, I think we'll take that power armor. No, don't go dying on us just yet. You still have something that we require, I'm afraid. Not you, though. You're dead as a doorknob. Although I guess we could take your rifle. Organs are our main export, but selling off some illegal under-the-table firearms also fetches a pretty penny from time to time. Oh, also I forgot to mention, Vargas is dead. He kinda, maybe sorta, got shot in the face by the minigun and died basically instantly. I would be more sad about this, but we only just met him. If anything, he's a business loss. Sure, we lost a potential decent member. I mean, how decent could he have been? He got shot in the face by the minigun, and the rest of us are still here. It seems like he might have been a little inexperienced. Either way, though, it looks like we have plenty of food now. We found a little bit of pemmican inside the rest of the place, but other than that, it was a great big dud. Except for some components and advanced components, which we also found. We also found a defender turret, last but not least, but it couldn't be rewired, so it was basically junk. And with that being the case, it was time for our adventuring squad to head back home. Speaking of which, back at the hospital, we had finally recruited Vaughn and Diana, no longer slaves, now some rough and tough raiders. Sort of. First, of course, we need to go ahead and equip them with some proper weapons and armor. That way, not only will they be raiders, but they can also look the part. Much more intimidating this way, and much better equipped for any situation like, oh, I don't know, if the Brotherhood of Steel land a vertibird in our front yard. Unlikely, but possible. Now then, with some extra helping hands, and while our adventurers are on their way back home, I think we need to create some proper bedrooms for our new members as well. Nothing too fancy, scrap furniture, the same as everyone else, of course. Once we were finished making these little humble abodes, we would also get our caravan returning, taking our 2 new raider pals into our prison, but stripping them and then tossing them into the operating rooms, prepping them for their surgeries. Which, you probably guessed it, mostly consisted of shaving them with a scrap metal machete and then rinsing them off with some radioactive creek water, but hey, it's the best we have. Now, as for the weapons and armor that we had acquired during our little excursion, we ended up giving Monovine the power armor, since she is a force to be reckoned with and is competing with Ginther for the strongest raider in our gang, of course. It would hardly be fair, though, given Ginther's natural strength, and of course we also gave some weapons and armor to Justin. Vargas, on the other hand, got turned into meat and thus gas to power our operation here. Perhaps if he weren't so useless dying on his first mission, we would give him a proper burial, but at least this way he'll be of some use for us and we can get our money's worth. We then ended up finishing our extensive research into sterile materials. Finally, some proper clean floors and walls. We'll only be starting off with the floors, though. We don't have all that much silver to spare, since most folks prefer to pay in caps. But even so, just having the sterile flooring alone is going to make our operations that much better and that much easier. Plus, for example, when our patients like these 2 raiders here are having their kidney and lung removed, one of each from each of them, and we let them sit for a few days to heal up, just in case maybe a slaver wants to pay us more, which probably won't happen, or if we end up changing our mind and wanting to recruit them, there's a very low low chance of them getting an infection thanks to our new sterile floor. So many possibilities. I also built some shelves here just outside the operating rooms. This seems like a much better place to store all of these. Now that we've gotten sterile materials out of the way, I think we're going to start researching machining, because it's a prerequisite for flak armor, which is what we're gunning for at the moment, so we can make ourselves some cheap ways to protect our soft bits and bobs. Now, machining also will allow us to build auto cutters, which basically completely automates the organ harvesting process as well as meat and things like that, although I think it's still going to be a few episodes before we have the knowledge, experience, and intelligence to go about operating one. It's a bit of an in-game machine. Now, as we're working on this important research, we're also going to be doing a bit more construction here in the hospital, a proper workshop and storage facility. I am sick and tired of just kind of having everything everywhere, including all of our production areas, and now we are going to have them compact and organized in one singular room, as all things should be. You'll also note that we have a stone cutting bench in here, and that's because we're going to actually be cutting our own stones to go about building, since one of our slaves, I can't remember who, maybe Vaughn, has a decent crafting skill, and instead of going about deconstructing other buildings, we'll be doing this. Much more efficient and much easier. And after we finish this up, to celebrate all of our recent success, Diana is throwing a great big shindig for all to attend. This, for some reason, was held in Elias's bedroom. Not exactly sure. I guess he doesn't mind. Nuka-Colas for everyone. Uh-oh. Hold that thought. Looks like we're under attack by the Brotherhood of Steel. Damn it. I knew I shouldn't have killed that scout. Well, to be fair, she shouldn't have been sticking her nose where it didn't belong, but whatever. Thank God none of the members in this little raiding party had any power armor. We might just stand a chance yet. Although, that being said, they have some pretty advanced weaponry. A military combat shotgun, and even laser pistols. Oh, shit. Our adversaries were planning out their attack for quite some time. This would give us the ample opportunity to hide in some nearby ruins and plot out an ambush. Our little surprise for them was spoiled a bit when they came up towards us a little bit earlier than we had expected, but nevertheless we fired quite a few bullets in their general direction, maybe chucked a few grenades. The laser pistolier was killed, thank Christ. And then all we had to do was deal with the others. Elias would attack what appeared to be their leader, hacking into his shoulder blade with his machete. Eventually, we had killed him too. And with that, we got extremely lucky. The Brotherhood of Steel are nothing to fuck with, okay? And the fact that we beat this little party says a lot about our teamwork and military minds, I suppose you could say. We're pretty good at planning ambushes. We don't exactly play fair like most other folks. But taking out these squads is only going to make things worse, as they're just going to come at us harder and harder. We have to be ready. Obviously, one of the easiest ways is to fight fire with fire, taking the weapons and armor that they've dropped, and another way is by harvesting the organs of all of our patients. That way we can make a pretty penny of caps that we can actually use to purchase ourselves some even better weapons and armor, and possibly free a few more slaves to join our cause. What do you think about it, young lady going by the name of Hammer, you Brotherhood of Steel scout or scribe or whatever you are? Oh, that's so kind of you to contribute your own heart to the cause. I knew you'd see things my way. On a serious note, though, we have a lot of organs ready for trade. We just gotta pack them into some backpacks and start heading on down the road. We almost have 2 shelves full. They're basically spilling over. And we don't want that to happen, because if they hit the ground, they're gonna get dirt on them. It's a whole thing. But of course, before that happened, we got them loaded up and sent out a little trade caravan to some of the nearby settlements just on the outskirts of Inn's Landing. Many folks looking for hearts and kidneys and lungs for their loved ones who have been attacked by death claws or some type of radioactive bog hounds or raiders, God forbid, and we're really saving lives here. They just obviously don't know where they came from. I can't stress that enough. But in their eyes, We are the good folks. Now, while they're out making us some moolah, we would also finally end up recruiting the slave known as El-Cal that we got from Fox & Co. Now, he is the last of these slaves, but he is also the most important. At least in a sense. He has a pretty incredible intellectual skill. And because of this, once he got his things equipped, his rifle and machete and some armor, he would start taking shifts with Elias, freeing one of them up to do other tasks, while the other was researching. Speaking of which, we finished up machining and we would immediately start researching into Flak armor as we talked about earlier. However, before we actually start researching into Flak armor, we are going to be re-equipping one of our rooms with some proper stone flooring, as well as yet another research bench. We need a proper laboratory to go about studying these different types of technologies. The more we learn, the more sophisticated the technologies become, and thus we can't just be sitting in some shed somewhere or some rinky-dink-dank room trying to figure all this out. Long story short, we have a larger research room with 2 benches, making the research much faster. The very next morning, our trade caravan had finally returned home with plenty of caps, of course, but they also brought back a Chinese assault rifle. Those damn commies knew how to make a weapon of war, let me tell you. Let's just hope it doesn't jam up on us. Oh, we also got a turret pack, which is pretty cool and should help us out a lot. All of this, caps, and we still had plenty of lungs left over. It would seem that we might need to broaden our horizons of potential customers very soon. Now, of course, though, I do want to reiterate one more time, I know I keep saying this, but I really want to stress home the point that we've made a lot of money. We've been saving up quite a bit in preparation for something. More on that in just a moment. For now, it would seem that we finally finished our research into Flak armor, also tying in with why we've been saving up money. This is going to allow us to create a few different types of armor, but the simplest, cheapest, and most effective that we can currently make ourselves is going to be some metal raider armor, like you see here. Made out of scrap metal and other junk we find lying around throughout the city. It doesn't offer all that much protection, but it's better than nothing, quite literally. But you might be asking yourself, why did you need to save up so many caps for this? Well, I didn't. However, the 2 of them are going to go hand in hand as they were needed for something much bigger. You see, my friends, we are going to be settling our very own, well, settlement. And we're also going to be funding it, as well as arming the people who are going to be living and working there. And these people are going to be, you guessed it, raiders, obviously. Thus why we needed the armor, and thus why we needed some starting capital to hire some ruffians. The name of this raider gang is going to be called Justin's Demons. Yes, you heard me and read that correctly. Yes, indeed, that is correct. Justin is starting his own raider gang for a second time. Wink. Oh wait, you can't see me winking. Justin is our mentally broken puppet who would fall on his own sword for us. Or take the fall for running a raider gang who can kidnap people and bring back here so that we may harvest their organs. And Justin's demons, the raiders, can also work as our defense in times of great need. You see, I prefer to work in secrecy, pulling the strings behind the curtain. That way our more open and authoritarian as well as expansionist raider gang proxy can be propped up by us and operate independently on their own under Justin's leadership. Wink, wink, wink. Again, obviously. Not to worry, though, I'm not going to be building a great big empire like I have in other series. I just want a little bit of a boost and also a bit of different ways of going about capturing people and raiding places. However, that being said, another issue that we run into is trying to grow and find decent medicine to use in our operations, so I don't see why these raiders couldn't start growing some, like with a heal root garden, or possibly also scavenging some from nearby ruins for us as well. Obviously, this doesn't mean that we won't still have shortages of medicine from time to time, but this will help us keep a decent flow of it in, so that way we can keep our operations going as often and as soon as possible. While our new raider gang is getting things sorted out, meanwhile back at the hospital we are actually making some pretty major improvements. Now, as mentioned previously, we started cutting up our own stone blocks, which is amazing because we have a decent sized stockpile of sandstone and slate nowadays, allowing us to do some pretty great flooring all throughout the entire hospital. Now, I know it doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things, but in day-to-day operations, this is going to keep most of our members from having mental breaks, having to see those disgusting ancient and ruined floors. It's all about the little things, you know what I mean? A good example of this is Justin's bedroom. As you can see, the impressiveness and the beauty really sucked ass, and then after adding in some stone flooring, they sucked slightly less ass. Baby steps, people, baby steps. During this time, we also started researching into gunsmithing with the ultimate goal of attempting to get to gun turrets, and possibly even energy turrets, as this would allow us to eventually create laser and plasma turrets, which should be able to melt through even the toughest of armors. But that is pretty out of our reach for right now, but maybe something to look forward to in the future. While we're also working on this research, we are going to begin trying to plant more vegetables. That way we have more food and we won't start starving again this coming winter like we did last winter. We're going to be planting some toxic potato plants, which don't give us all that many potatoes, but this is one of the few areas we can actually grow crops in, so not to worry though, as the other areas are much larger and should be able to produce more crops. During this time, we also finished up gunsmithing and started continuing down the line towards gun turrets once more. Before we would finish up that research though, we also planted a variety of crops, with that being onions, peppers, peas, etc., etc. That's right, no more boiled, flavorless rice and nauseating toxic meat for us. And would you look at that, by the time I got done yapping about vegetables, we finally finished the research into blowback operations. It's time for us to start on gun turrets, finally. We also finally had a dedicated room to all of our batteries. We also ended up adding in 2 more, that way we can power the entire place without solar, or if something were to happen to our chem fuel generators, for a decent bit of time until we make repairs. And of course now we don't have to worry about Angus kicking the breaker while he's juicing up. Oh, and we also added in yet another scrap turret and some slate spike traps. I forgot to get footage of us creating those, but here they are. These will help us take down some of the less observant adversaries that come our way. I must say I'm quite proud of the progress that we've made this episode so far. We're really beginning to make the hospital shape up a bit. Sure, it's no Brotherhood of Steel or Enclave Laboratory type of clean and, efficiency, but it is something, and I think we're headed in the right direction for sure. We also finished the research into gun turrets, finally, and, well, we didn't end up building any, unfortunately, because I was a little bit more preoccupied with our new raider gang being ready for action, and of course, I couldn't wait to use them against the children of the fog, hoping to go about enslaving some of them. Well, you can't win them all. I mean, it was one guy with a scrap rifle. Not to worry, we'll hire another. Anywho, though, we also ended up getting yet another slave caravan from Fox & Co. Fox wasn't with them this time, but there were 2 slaves with them. This is little Larry and Lee. Larry here is, yes, a bit of a young lady, but she's also killed 6 men with a rusty fork. Or so she says. We purchased the freedom of Larry, and she was quite excited to join us. Some might say a little too excited. Now, look, I know I probably shouldn't give a child a gun, but my God, you try taking it away from her. Lee, on the other hand, didn't really have all that good of skills, and I didn't really want to try to recruit a raider who couldn't, well, raid or do anything. So, Lee here is going to be our organ mule. This way, we make a lot more money than the 300 or 400 some caps that we spent to purchase him. That's just called good business, baby. Ah, Lee, thank you for your cervix. You get it? Because cervix It's an organ. No, I know Lee's not a lady. Moving on. And we finally got our medicine from Justin's Demons. Whoa, Nelly, is that Vault-Tec? Something tells me they must have found that while scavenging, as I don't think that they would have been able to grow it. And as you can see, for the small initial investment of housing and feeding some raiders, we now have a medicine operation free of charge. Sure, it's tiny, but it has the potential to become something much greater. Speaking of which, we've now got yet another crazy person with a scrap rifle and some caps in their pocket, ready to attack the children of the fog for us. And this time, it ended up working out. Not only did our raider not die, but they also managed to get us some loot. Unfortunately, no slaves this time, but they did get us a bazooka, so that's worth something, I'm sure. Yes, it is a shame we didn't get any potential patients, though it's not always a guarantee, and that's why having this raider gang isn't really all that overpowered, and we still have to do a lot of legwork ourselves. Again, though, this rocket launcher is pretty sweet. See you later.